Well, it's finally happening. The trial everyone in the country has been waiting for. United States versus Diddy. You know, the funny thing is it actually has that vibe of a heavyweight title fight. Although Diddy has his legal dream team, which coincidentally I'm not a part of because I was not available. Well, that and they didn't ask me. But anyway, although he has his legal dream team and enough money for all the experts that money can buy, he still is going to have an uphill battle in this case. I mean, it really will be trial by fire. Now, if I was on Diddy's legal defense team, how would I defend him? What strategy would I use? Well, get comfortable, join me on a legal deep dive, defending Diddy, trial by fire, and watch me lay out my defense for Diddy's trial strategy. What's good, people? You know, whenever there's a big trial that's being covered by the news, everybody I know is always asking me what I think about the trial, what I think about the case. And I mean everybody. My clients, my friends, my relatives, my psychiatrist, my anger management counselor, my rabbi. The list goes on. I know some of you probably thinking, all right, Mobley, you're doing your podcast, you're a funny guy on TikTok. Yeah, you're a funny guy. But what do you really know about defending a case like this? So let me tell you, to be honest, I know a lot about defending cases like this. I've actually tried multiple cases like this, allegations like this, around the entire state of South Carolina against some of the best prosecutors in the state. At the time I tried these cases, my clients did not have the resources that Diddy has. I didn't have a legal team backing me up. I didn't have experts, and my client didn't have resources to pay all that. I mean, they barely had the money to pay me. And honestly, some of them still owe me money. But nonetheless, I actually tried a lot of these cases by myself. So I've got a lot of experience in coming up with a very legitimate defense for cases like this. And the funny thing about, you know, me trying these cases by myself, and I don't do that anymore. I don't have to deal with that anymore. But literally just a couple of days ago, I filed a lawsuit in a civil case, a personal injury case, that got a lot of media attention here in South Carolina. And I actually got a call from a reporter to ask me about the case. That's what happens when you file a big lawsuit that's in the news. Reporters want to get a statement from you or a quote from you, ask questions about the case. But when the reporter called me, he actually told me that he remembers covering a case I tried 25 years ago. And he actually told me how he remembers covering the trial, which is a big media case at the time. It was an animal mauling case that got a lot of media coverage. And he was telling me how he was covering the trial, and he saw on one side, he saw this team of prosecutors and two different law enforcement agencies and all these investigators and cops and crime scene experts and other witnesses. And he said he looked over, at the defense and saw there's just one guy sitting there with his client. And he was thinking, man, how's this one guy going to overcome all these lawyers and experts and law enforcement personnel? And he was actually shocked when I actually won the case. And I told him, yeah, I remember that trial and story of my life, me against the world. And hey, I'm good with that. That's how I like it most of the time. So anyway, funny story. Before we even get into the facts and the evidence and the law and things like that, when you're trying a criminal case, you're defending a criminal trial, you have to have the right mindset. And when I say the right mindset, sometimes people ask me, how are you going to win this case? Or you can't win that case. And when I'm trying a criminal case, I don't think about winning and losing. I mean, whether I win or lose, that's not something I have control over. I can try an excellent case, and based on the facts, the circumstances, the jury still convict my client. And there are times when I've tried cases where I thought I could have done a much better job and my client got acquitted. So the one thing I can control is my performance, my strategy, and how I execute it. So I don't really worry about winning or losing. My focus is on what I can control and what I execute. And typically, what I always look for in every case, in every criminal trial, is what are the facts, what are the things in this case that help my client, that the prosecution cannot beat me on, things that they cannot dispute, things that they cannot have an answer for, things that help my client, and that's what I look for. And when I find those things, there's always 3 or 4 or 5 things in every trial. I find those things, and throughout the course of the trial, I take those facts and I beat the prosecutors over the head with those facts over and over and over again. That is my defense. That is a great strategy to use because, again, you're focusing on the strengths of your case. You're focusing on what you can control. And what often happens when I have a strategy like that, when I focus throughout the entire trial on things that they cannot beat me on, you will find that over the course of the trial, the prosecutor's strategy starts shifting. And when I say that instead of having the energy and focusing on the strengths of their case, they feel like they have pressure to come up with an answer to the problems that you're raising. And what happens is, so they're not spending the majority of their time and energy on their strengths, they're having to come up with ways and spend time and energy talking about your defense, which dilutes from the strength of their case. Because now more people are talking about the circumstance and the facts that help you than the things that hurt you. So that's why that's always a great strategy. And you also have to accept that in every criminal trial, even cases, in trials where you have a very strong defense, there will always be a witness or some evidence of some type that you really don't have an answer for or you really can't shake, and it just is what it is when it comes to that. That's going to be in every case. So you can't be distracted by that or let the fact that you can't shake that one witness or find the reason or way to attack that witness or find a way to attack that evidence. You cannot let that, kind of get you down and focus on that because you're going to have that in every trial. But what I've also found, and I believe that jurors don't think the same way that lawyers do. We will look at things and focus on details that we think are problematic because we're lawyers. But when you think about jurors are hearing over the course of a trial, especially a complicated trial that takes a week or so, they're hearing a lot of different things. They're hearing from witnesses, they're hearing from law enforcement, they're hearing legal arguments, they're hearing objections, they're hearing, witnesses get cross-examined, they're getting a vibe off of people and their emotional responses. So oftentimes the things that we as lawyers think are such a big deal because it's evidence that we can't overcome with any strategy, the jury doesn't put as much weight on it as we do in the context of the entire trial. So that's something to keep in mind. But ultimately, the thing that I do focus on, although I'm not trying to specifically focus on getting a not guilty verdict, what I'm really focused on are the facts and circumstances that the prosecution cannot beat me on that will give the jurors some hesitation, some pause as to whether or not they're going to convict my client. And it depends, on a lot of different factors. I mean, sometimes it's based on the evidence. Sometimes you have clients that aren't very likable, but the law is on your side and you want to really kind of stress that. Sometimes it's an emotional thing you want to kind of latch onto because jurors are still human. If I can find a way for them to empathize with my client, feel sorry for my client, or in the converse, if I can find a way for them to dislike the victim or the accuser, that's something that goes a long way because if they don't have sympathy for the accuser, the person accusing the defendant, if they think that person's unreliable or if they think that person's not a quality person, they can find reasons to find your client not guilty. And I've actually used that to my advantage a lot of times. And you got to be very delicate. You don't go in yelling and screaming at victims and calling them liars and all that kind of stuff. It's really important to kind of find facts and circumstances that show them in an unfavorable light so that a jury's going to think, something, this person is really not the kind of person we want to, get behind and rally behind. We don't feel the need to give a conviction in this case because that accuser or that victim is kind of an unsavory person. So that's something to think about too. What's good, people? Suits, Law and Order, LA Law, Matlock, Perry Mason. I think it'd be fun to do a podcast talking about our favorite all-time lawyer TV shows. What we like, what we don't like, what's realistic, what's not realistic, and really just go down the rabbit hole. I'll even share which lawyer TV show made the difference in me wanting to be a lawyer. Do me a favor, post your comments and tell me your favorite lawyer TV shows so we can talk about them too. That's it.